Welcome to ഈ രണ്ടാമത്തെ ഓപ്പൺ ഫോറത്തിലേക്ക് സ്വാഗതം. Welcome to this second session of open forum. We don't have much time, so I think we'll make it very brief. The subject of this session is the future of parallel or cinema. Basically, we chose this because people think that in the digital age, when everything is available everywhere, what is the point of talking about a parallel cinema movement? Or has it been, absorbed, co-opted by the mainstream industry? Or is there still a place for another kind of cinema which searches for a different kind of aesthetics and tries to interrogate whatever is accepted as the cinema?
You know probably the very famous book by the French author André Bazin, What is Cinema? Try to find it if you don't know it. It's a wonderful book. A question which becomes more and more difficult because cinema normally is 90 minutes and 35 millimeters. This to be shown and screened in a dark room called cinema with that beam from the back. This magic doesn't exist anymore. I'm sure that nowadays more films are seen than ever before, but not anymore in the cinemas. They are shown, you know it better than me, in parallel circles. They are shown on the internet. And I must tell you that I'm a big, I don't know if I can say this here, I'm a big fan of piracy. Because you can get everything there, and more than ever before. When I was young, I was dreaming about a montage table where I could see a film in slowly stop it, go back, and so on. Now I can do it. I'm also convinced that the system of making films nowadays, you go to a film school, you start as an assistant director, then you make your first film, that this system doesn't function anymore. There's a small competition in the internet on so-called 1-minute films, short films of 1 minute, not more, not less, 1 minute. And I happened some years ago to be in the jury there, fictitious jury. Virtual jury. We never met. And I must tell you that this 1-minute films were done by young people, amateurs, and they were astonishingly good and much better than a lot of things which came out of the system. So I think these borderlines are somehow disappearing. I must tell you that there's another thing which I don't like at all, that nowadays in Europe, you can make a film on every subject you want. The system is eating you, and if you are an angry young man, they are eating you. You can make it. So this perspective of parallel world, parallel cinema, I don't know if it has a future in my country. I'm sorry. I'm not talking about this country here, and I'm not talking about Latin America, which I rather know very well. There, the situation is totally different. But in my countries, in the middle of Europe, it's no problem at all to make a movie. Also for young people, it's rather easy because there are so many sources of financing, and you can make almost everything what you want to do. So why the need to go to a parallel system? Take the filmmakers who are still working, like Wim Wenders, like Werner Herzog, like Schlöndorff, like Margarete von Trotta, all the Germans you know. Yeah, they all started in a sort of parallel, and they all ended up in the system, and they changed the system. And maybe this is one way to do things. So now it's not 5 but 7 minutes. Thank you very much.
You want to leave early? No, you're early, but I can stay for 10 minutes more. Yeah, 10 minutes more. Okay, then because Klaus has to go, he has his duties as a jury. So if there are any questions for him, we can take now. Brief, sharp, any comments, questions at the moment. Because he gives a very concise picture about the state of parallel cinema in Europe, where it is getting domesticated by television in a way, and all the darkness or the other life of parallel cinema being taken away by television and the whole thing being eaten up by the system. Any questions? Use the mic, use the mic.
You said that first these filmmakers like Herzog started in parallel, then they entered the system, became the system, and then they fought the system. How did they fight the system?
First, let me add one thing which I forgot. You have a very worked out, a very wonderful movement of film clubs. We had it everywhere. It died 10, 15 years ago. We don't have it anymore, which would be a resource for taking care of parallel films. How do they fight the system? The financing of a movie is very difficult because you need to get to different sources, and most of these sources are state, public funding. If you manage to go to one, you get automatically the others. If you made some films which, for example, were in the competition of Cannes, or you won a big award somewhere, opens the door. You have to talk to the people deciding on the money, and you have to convince them. It's not easy, but it's possible. The bad thing which I need to say probably is a lot of young people nowadays making films in Germany want to see their films on TV. They don't want to make parallel films. They don't want to make angry films. They don't want to make political films. They don't want to make documentaries on imminent political subjects. They don't want. They want to become part of the system. That's an atmosphere just now in the societies there. If you would really be very angry and you would make like the very first films by Fassbinder, the very first films, then you might indeed have problems. But for the rest, no. Do you know, the fact is simply that you don't need the public anymore to get your film financed, because your film is financed before it reaches the first projection in the cinemas.
One more question, yeah, we can take one more. Yeah, Mike, use the mic.
Would you make a comment on the Dogma 95 movement of the Denmark film, Lars von Trier and company? What they did right and wrong. Dogma 95. Dogma movement. Dogma movement.
You mean the
Lars von Trier.
Lars von Trier? If you belonged to Dogma in Denmark, if you belonged to the circle of that, then to answer your question, you got very easy money because they had success. I don't know if they had a real big public success, maybe later on, but they had a big success in festivals, in awards, everywhere, with the critics everywhere. Do you know, Dogma came out as a sort of opposition against the traditional film industry, which was never a big industry in Denmark. And it attracted the festivals. Do you know, festivals are like, I don't know, like the Pavlov's dogs. If there is something that, yeah, okay, we have a headline, Dogma, yeah. I think it is over appreciated, and I think in the meantime it's history. because it doesn't, they don't follow their own, there are only very few films which did it like this. But you know, see it as one of the schools which cinema in its history produced, like the Nouvelle Vague in France, like the young German cinema, like the Italian neorealism, whatever, yeah, and this also is part of the, it had a certain effect at the time, yeah, but now it's done. Agreed?
Be brief.
There are
We can take one more question.
two things I wanted to ask you. Like, number one, how can you speak about Herzog and Fassbinder in the same breath? Herzog and Fassbinder, two phenomenal filmmakers from Germany. The second thing is, sitting here in Kerala, having watched their films at film festivals, we think that they've changed the very grammar of cinema. How can you say that they have been domesticated, that they are part of the system? They have always been out of the system.
As I'm rather old, I know the German situation from quite some years. And there were young filmmakers at that time. And Fassbinder was one of them, Herzog was one of them. They went to our government and said, to the cultural part, and said, you are giving such a lot of money for opera, theaters, museums. Why don't you give any money for cinema? And the minister at that time, which was the same minister which is in charge of police and interior affairs, so the police minister said, how much money do you need? And they said, oh, for the beginning, give us 5 million German marks at that time. And this was the beginning of the new German cinema. And the people like Herzog, like Fassbinder, like Alexander Kluge, like Schlöndorff, they were a group. They worked together. They called themselves the producers of new German cinema. So historically, they are together, even if they took very different ways. I mean, also Wenders tried to make something in Hollywood. He failed. He came back. Werner Herzog is now in Hollywood and making Hollywood films. Yeah. But if you take their first 10 years of work, then you find that they are very close together in the spirit of what they are doing. And your second question, sorry.
Were they actually part of, did they become part of the system?
Did they become part of the system? They became the system.
Thank you, sir.
I mean, do you know? There's something which you should know. If you make a film festival, you get money from the government because the governor or prime minister or whatever wants to be seen on television together with stars. If you want to help films by giving them money, yeah, you want that the red carpet in Cannes, maybe if you dream the red carpet in Hollywood at the Oscars. Do you know, at my time, when I was young, I didn't care about the Oscars. What's that, please? Yeah. Nowadays, the Oscars are influencing everything, and if you can get a small piece of the Oscars, even being nominated and being there, it's a big success already. And to get a prize in one of the big festivals, all those things help you to get a part of the system, to get the money for the next film. If you are young and unknown, it's probably more difficult. Yeah. But if you have already this success, and all those names which we quoted just now, they had this success. Yeah. They have it much, much easier. And I told you, it's not one source, it's a lot of sources where you have to go. It's not one producer, it's a lot of television stations and regional subventioning funds which are doing this. So I'm sorry, it sounds like a rich country, and it is a rich country. So there's enough money, it's still enough money to make films.
Thank you, Klaus, for your time and also for very valuable insights. We have two more speakers. I will move to Sunny Joseph next. It's okay. Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks, sir. Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Sunny, good evening. Good evening.
On this subject, I cannot but totally, it is whatever Chandretan said is the crux of the thing. There is nothing more to add, and probably we have to see that whether it is cinema or any other art, it is not any different. It is totally connected with our present life. There is nothing above that. So how this is being transformed now, and how it is going to be in the future, we have to see. But in Kerala, at least, I see a positive trend in terms of, if you look at it, some of the films in our language, they are all made because of the efforts of some friends. And there are as long as there are friends like this, I think the different kind of cinema in Kerala will be coming up again and again. I am an optimist, and I hope such efforts are happening again. But does it anymore have any kind of influence in our life? I am not so sure, because like other speakers said, it is all about money now, and the success or any value is directly related to money, and that is a danger sign. And somehow we have to, I always hope that only art has a more subversive power than money, but it is yet to be realized.
Thank you, Sunny. I will move on to Behrooz Gandhi, who is from London, film historian critic. Yeah.
I'd like to give an overview, because I've been involved with cinema in England, but I was born and brought up in India and really learnt about Indian cinema in England, which is a very unusual perspective, because I did my dissertation on Indian cinema and got a job at the British Film Institute, which was a very desirable job at the time, and then became a historian on film. So I've seen many incarnations. This goes back to 1977, and now it's 2014. And if you ask me the question about what I think about parallel cinema, I would have answered it differently in every decade. With I'd just like to go back to the past, when we were college students in Bombay, and the whole parallel cinema movement was going on in Bombay. It was an extremely exciting time, with people like Kumar Shahani making his first film, Avatar Call, making 27 Down, and that was the sense really of a parallel cinema movement, which is why I took that love of that moment of cinema and did my dissertation in England. Then with NFTC funding, it was truly in parallel to Bollywood, which didn't have that word then. And since the 90s, the industry, as you all know, has taken over everything. NFDC still exists, but it's lost its impact. And the new cinema movement with Bhuvan Shom and that whole Calcutta school really has fractured. And I think today in 2014, now being a teacher, occasional teacher of cinema, with my students, I find that this word has far more meaning than it did before, in a new way, in a kind of, because everybody is kind of quite tired talking to Indian students, and I've taught a term at Pune Film Institute to the director students, and I was very encouraged by their response to the fact that you have to join Bollywood to survive, but they're artistically very frustrated. And my students, other students outside, are also looking for a new language, and I'm very hopeful. I was given a bet by Marco Muller, who was the festival director of Venice, very well. He said there is no parallel cinema in India. This was back in 2005. And I said, yes, there is. He said, after Adur Gopalakrishnan and Mani Kaul, I haven't found anybody. So I embarked on a bet which for various reasons I couldn't fulfill. I lost that one. But I still intend to win and show him that there is hope. And just having seen one Malayalam film this morning, I'm very hopeful. Thank you.
Thank you, Behrouz. I think we have finished with the panelists. The floor is open. മലയാളത്തിലും ചോദിക്കാം, മലയാളത്തിൽ ചോദ്യങ്ങൾ ചോദിക്കാം, ഇംഗ്ലീഷിലും ചോദിക്കാം. ചോദിക്കാം. ആരോടാണ് ചോദിക്കുന്നതെന്ന് പറയാൻ വളരെ സംക്ഷിപ്തമായി ചോദിക്കാനും കുഴപ്പമില്ല. മൈക്ക് ചോദിച്ചു.
അപ്പോൾ എനിക്ക് പറയാപ്പോൾ ചന്ദ്ര സാറ് പറഞ്ഞതിൻ്റെ ആകത്തുക മനസ്സിലായി. എനിക്ക് ഇംഗ്ലീഷ് എല്ലാം അറിയില്ലെങ്കിൽ തന്നെയും ചില കാര്യങ്ങൾ മനസ്സിലായത് സിനിമ ജനങ്ങൾക്ക് വേണ്ടി ആകണം എന്നുള്ള അർത്ഥത്തിൽ പറയുന്നു എന്നാണ് ഞാൻ മനസ്സിലാക്കുന്നത്. പക്ഷേ ഇവിടെ അതാണോ സംഭവിക്കുന്നത്? ഇവിടെ എന്ന് പറഞ്ഞാൽ ഇപ്പോൾ ഇന്ന് ഡെലിഗേറ്റിനെ നിങ്ങളെടുത്ത് പരിശോധിച്ചാൽ ഉപരിവർഗത്തിലുള്ള ഒരു വൻ പ്രതിനിധികളും ഇടത്തരക്കാരും അല്ലാതെ അതിന് കീഴിലുള്ള പാവപ്പെട്ട ഒരു ഡെലിഗേറ്റ് എന്നുള്ള നിലയിൽ ഇവിടെ എടുക്കാൻ പറ്റില്ല. കാരണം അവർക്ക് താല്പര്യമില്ല. ഞാൻ ഈ നഗരത്തിൽ ജീവിക്കുന്ന ഒരാളാണ്. ഈ നഗരത്തിലെ കരിമടം കോളനിയും രാജാജി നഗർ കോളനിയുടെ പാവപ്പെട്ട ആളുകൾക്ക് ഇതിനകത്തൊരു താല്പര്യമില്ലാത്ത അവരുടെ കുറ്റം കൊണ്ടല്ല, അവർക്ക് ആ ബോധ നിലവാരത്തിലേക്ക് വരാൻ കഴിഞ്ഞില്ല എന്നുള്ളതാണ് അതുമായി ബന്ധപ്പെട്ട് പറയാനുള്ളത്. മറ്റൊന്ന്, ഇപ്പോൾ ചന്ദ്രൻ സാറും അതേപോലെ അടൂർ ഗോപാലകൃഷ്ണൻ അടക്കമുള്ള സംവിധായകരുടെ കാലഘട്ടം കഴിഞ്ഞാൽ കേരള സിനിമ എന്താവുമെന്ന് സംശയിക്കുകയാണ്. ഇന്ന് തന്നെ ഇപ്പോൾ ഓടുന്ന മലയാള സിനിമയിൽ യഥാർത്ഥത്തിൽ അത്തരത്തിൽ ഒരു ജനകീയ പങ്കാളിത്തത്തോടുകൂടി വരുന്ന ഒറ്റ സിനിമ പോലും ഈ മലയാളക്കരയിൽ ഒരു തുരുത്തായി കാണുന്നത് ചന്ദ്രൻ സാറിനെയും അടൂർ ഗോപാലകൃഷ്ണൻ അതേപോലുള്ള സംവിധായകരെയാണ്. ഇത് കഴിഞ്ഞാൽ അത് വരുന്നില്ല. അപ്പോൾ ഈ ഫിലിമോത്സവം അടക്കമുള്ള കാര്യങ്ങൾ ഈ ഒരു കാലഘട്ടം കഴിഞ്ഞാൽ പുതിയ ഒരു സാഹചര്യത്തിലേക്ക് വരുമ്പോൾ ആ നിലയിൽ അതിനെ കൈകാര്യം ചെയ്യുന്ന തരത്തിലേക്കുള്ള ആളുകളെ കൊണ്ടുവരുന്നതിന് വേണ്ടി ബഹുഭൂരിപക്ഷം വരുന്ന ആളെ മാറ്റി നിർത്തുകയാണ് ഈ ഫിലിമോത്സവം. ഒരു വലിയ പാവപ്പെട്ട ജനവിഭാഗത്തിൻ്റെ വലിയ തോതിലുള്ള ആളുകളെ മാറ്റി നിർത്തിക്കൊണ്ടാണ് ഇത് ഇവിടെ നടക്കുന്നത്. അപ്പോൾ ഭാവിയിൽ അവരെ കൂടി പങ്കെടുപ്പിക്കുന്നതിനും ആ നിലയിൽ ഈ കേരള സിനിമ കൊണ്ടുപോകുന്നതിനും വേണ്ടിയുള്ള കാര്യങ്ങൾ ചെയ്യണമെന്നാണ് ഇതുമായി ബന്ധപ്പെട്ട് എനിക്ക് പറയാം.
ഇതൊരു ചോദ്യമല്ല, അതൊരു സ്റ്റേറ്റ്മെൻറ്റാണ്. 100% താങ്കളോട് ഞാൻ എന്താ പറയുക യോജിക്കുന്നു. പക്ഷേ അറ്റ് ദ സെയിം ടൈം I was just finding it funny. When I came here first, sitting here, I thought this is a full audience. There were so many people around. That was another queue. So that just disappeared. This is what happens to Malayalam cinema. Thank you. No, we were looking at so many people. They didn't have a seat. They were standing. But they were standing for some other film. So we always take it for a mistake that this is for our film. No, this is for some other film.
Question, Bharat?
My question is to Sunny Joseph, sir. Sir, in the past 2 or 3 years, Indian cinema has been witnessing a transition which is yet to be come properly in the mainstream media. For example, films like Apur Panjari, Ship of Theseus, Lunchbox, these sort of artistically good as well as realistically fruitful films are coming as real in Indian cinema. But it is a very unfortunate thing that movies like this are not getting a not getting their not getting well received by the audience. They are ignored by festivals mainly for I don't know the specific reasons, but they are not getting their share, their deserved share in any festivals. For example, even last year I asked people organizing Kerala State Chalachitra Academy why Ship of Thesis was being rejected, and they gave some reasons which I couldn't quite agree with. That is another thing. But sir, do you think there is a failure in the film society as a whole, that we are unable to project those good movies which will get recognized in the outside audience as well for a major world market? For example, films like Yapur Panjali.
Yeah. വെൽ എനിക്കിതിൽ ഇപ്പം പിന്നെ ഒരു പ്രത്യേക അവസ്ഥയെക്കുറിച്ചാണ് ഇത്രയും പറഞ്ഞത്. അപ്പോൾ അതിൽ നിരവധി കാര്യങ്ങളുണ്ട്. പക്ഷേ ഈ സിനിമയ്ക്കൊക്കെ നല്ല അംഗീകാരം കിട്ടിയിട്ടുണ്ട്. ഇപ്പം ഇവിടെ റെഫർ ചെയ്ത സിനിമകൾക്കൊക്കെ ആഗോളതലത്തിൽ നല്ല അംഗീകാരം കിട്ടിയ സിനിമകളാണ്. അതേപോലെയുള്ള മറ്റു സിനിമകളിൽ നമ്മുടെ ഭാഷയിലും ഉണ്ടാകുന്നുണ്ട്. പക്ഷേ ഒരു ഹൈപ്പിൽ പോയി കഴിയുമ്പോഴത്തേന് മീഡിയ ഹൈപ്പിൽ നിങ്ങളെപ്പോലെയുള്ള ചെറുപ്പക്കാർ ഈ 3 പേരല്ലേ പറയുന്നുള്ളൂ. മലയാളത്തിൽ വന്ന നല്ല സിനിമകളുണ്ടല്ലോ, കഴിഞ്ഞ കൊല്ലം അതിന് മുമ്പിലൊക്കെ വന്ന സുദേവൻ്റെ പടമുണ്ട്, അല്ലെങ്കിൽ ഈ വർഷം പിന്നെ മറ്റ് ചിത്രങ്ങളുണ്ട്. ഞാൻ ജൂറിയിലുള്ളതുകൊണ്ട് പേര് പറയണില്ലെന്നേ ഉള്ളൂ. അല്ലെങ്കിൽ ആ നല്ല സിനിമകൾ ഇവിടെ ഉണ്ടാകുന്നുണ്ട്. അതിന് പിന്നെ കാഴ്ചക്കാരായിട്ടുള്ള പിന്നെ ഇപ്പം ചന്ദ്രേട്ടൻ പറഞ്ഞ പോലെ ഫിലിം ഫെസ്റ്റിവലിൽ അല്ലാതെ തിയേറ്ററിൽ കൂടെ വന്ന് കണ്ടാലേ ഇതൊക്കെ സക്സസ്ഫുൾ ആവുള്ളൂ. അപ്പം ഓടിയില്ലെങ്കിൽ ആ പടം മോശമാണെന്നുള്ളൊരു ചിന്താഗതിയാണ് പൊതുവേ ഉള്ളത്. ഇപ്പം അതല്ല, അതിൽ കാമ്പുള്ള സിനിമകളിൽ അതിലുള്ള കാഴ്ച കണ്ടെടുക്കാൻ കാണികളും കൂടെ ശ്രമിച്ചാലേ നടക്കുകയുള്ളൂ. ഫിലിം മേക്കേഴ്സ് മാത്രം വിചാരിച്ച് നടക്കില്ല.
ചന്ദ്രൻ സാറിനോടാണ്. സാറ് പറയുകയുണ്ടായി പാരലൽ സിനിമ എന്ന് പറയുന്ന ഒരു പരികല്പന, ഒരു ഗണകൽപ്പന ആവശ്യമില്ല, ഞാൻ സിനിമയാണ് ഉണ്ടാക്കുന്നത്. സത്യത്തിൽ പാരലൽ സിനിമ എന്നൊക്കെ ഒരു ട്രാക്കിൽ വിശേഷിപ്പിക്കേണ്ടി വരുന്ന ഒരു ചരിത്ര സാമൂഹ്യ സാഹചര്യം ഉള്ളതുകൊണ്ടാണ് ഇന്ന് നമുക്ക് മനുഷ്യൻ എന്ന് പറയുന്ന ഒരു പൊതുഗുണത്തെക്കുറിച്ച് സംസാരിക്കാൻ പറ്റുമോ? അതോ പെണ്ണിനെക്കുറിച്ചും ആണിനെക്കുറിച്ചും അല്ലെങ്കിൽ ലൈംഗിക ന്യൂനപക്ഷത്തെക്കുറിച്ചും മലപ്പുറക്കാരനെ കുറിച്ചും ഒക്കെ അല്ലേ പറയാൻ കഴിയുള്ളൂ. പൊതു മനുഷ്യൻ എന്ന് പറയുന്നത് ആധുനികത ഉണ്ടാക്കിയ ഒരു വലിയ ഗണകൽപ്പനയാണ്. എന്ന് പറയുന്ന ഒരു സവിശേഷ സാഹചര്യത്തിലാണ് നമ്മൾ പാരലൽ സിനിമയെക്കുറിച്ച് പറയേണ്ടി വരുന്നത്. അതൊരു രാഷ്ട്രീയമായ പരികല്പന കൂടിയാണ്. അപ്പോൾ നമ്മൾ ഇതൊന്നും ഇല്ലാന്നും നമ്മൾ ഒരു വലിയൊരു ജാനറിനെ സംബന്ധിച്ച് പറയുന്നതിനകത്ത് ഒരു അരാഷ്ട്രീയ സ്വഭാവം ഉണ്ടോ എന്നാണ് ചോദ്യം. അതിന്റെ കൂടുതൽ കാര്യം മോഹൻ മാഷ് ഒന്നും സംസാരിച്ചില്ല, സംസാരിക്കേണ്ടി വരും എന്ന് തോന്നുന്നു.
അവസാനത്തെ ചോദ്യം മോഹനേട്ടനെ പറയാൻ പറ്റുള്ളൂ. ആദ്യത്തെ ചോദ്യം ഞാൻ പറയും. ഞാൻ സംസാരിച്ചതും ഇപ്പോൾ നടക്കുന്ന ഈ പാരലൽ സിനിമ എന്ന് പറയുന്ന ഒരു കൺസെപ്റ്റ് തന്നെ ഏതാണ്ട് 40 കൊല്ലം ഉണ്ടായതാണ്. ആ കാലത്ത് ഞാൻ അതിനോട് കലഹിച്ചിരുന്നു എന്നാണ് പറഞ്ഞത്. ആ കാലത്ത് ഞാൻ ആഗ്രഹിച്ചിരുന്നത് സിനിമ ഉണ്ടാക്കാൻ. ആ കാലത്ത് ഞാൻ ചെയ്തിരുന്ന സിനിമ, എൻ്റെ ആദ്യത്തെ സിനിമ കബനി നദി ചുവന്നപ്പോൾ എന്ന സിനിമയാണ്. മലയാള സിനിമയുടെ ഏത് ചരിത്രം നോക്കിയാലും കബനി നദി എന്ന് പറഞ്ഞ സിനിമ മെയിൻ സ്ട്രീം സിനിമ ആയിരുന്നില്ല. സോ ഐ സ്റ്റാർട്ടഡ് വിത്ത് ദാറ്റ്. സോ ഫോർ മീ ഓൺലി ദാറ്റ് റിമെയിൻസ്. ഞാൻ ആ അർത്ഥത്തിലാണ് പറയുന്നത്. സിനിമ എന്ന് പറയുന്നതിന് ഇന്നിപ്പോൾ നമുക്ക് എല്ലാ അർത്ഥത്തിലും സിനിമയുടെ എല്ലാ വ്യാകരണങ്ങളും അറിയുന്ന ആളുകൾ ഇന്ന് മെയിൻ സ്ട്രീം സിനിമയിൽ വർക്ക് ചെയ്യുന്നുണ്ട്. ആൻഡ് യു ക്യാൻ സീ സിനിമ അറ്റ് ദ ബെസ്റ്റ്. ബട്ട് അറ്റ് ദ സെയിം ടൈം ദർ ഇസ് സംതിങ് കോൾഡ് ആറ്റിറ്റ്യൂഡ്. ദർ ഇസ് സംതിങ് കോൾഡ് ലുക്കിംഗ് അറ്റ് ഹ്യൂമൻ ബീയിങ്സ്. ദെയർ വി ഡിഫർ. അത് സിനിമയുടെ പാരലൽ അല്ല, ലൈഫിൻ്റെ പാരലൽ ആണ്. ഇറ്റ്സ് അബൌട്ട് മെയിൻ സ്ട്രീം ലൈഫ് ആൻഡ് ലീഡിങ് എ പാരലൽ ലൈഫ്. Because people come to cinema to get into riches. You know about so many cases of people who have come. I know I have been into cinema for the 40 years. I know about people who have come totally bereft of anything. You know, for 10 rupees they were in front of my house. And they are into issues like 150 crores income tax now, or 200 crores income tax. So this is what cinema is in a great sense. But we have been keeping away from that. Then I always remember a person called P.A. Bakar, whom I can call my guru. I don't use that word guru. I don't like that word guru. But he is the first person to have initiated me into cinema. And he died in 92, only living in rented houses. He made 7 or 8 films, but he never imagined, or rather he never matched cinema into a money-making process. But people who have assisted P.A. Bakar have made riches. People who have first come into P.A. Bakar cinema have made into so many stupendous millionaires. So we should always remember that these people, like John Abraham, like Pavitran, like Aravindan, like Chindarevi, these people have been working in cinema for the last 40 years as I know it. And they have left somewhere, of course. Death is not the ultimate for everybody, but their life will remain even after death. So as long as that continues, there is absolutely no question of the relevance of other thought. The thought cannot be somewhere stopped, Thoughts will always continue. Alternate thoughts. That's why I said, why parallel? It must be against them. Why go with them? Be against them. That was my meaning. Thank you.
Manata, do you believe in parallel cinema?
See, when we refer different cinema as parallel cinema, it no more exists now. We refer it in connection with this new cinema of the 70s and 80s. And we who were there to make such films, like Chandran, Pavi, Adore and everything. Of course, we had great hopes about it running parallel to the mainstream cinema. And it ran up to in 70s and 80s, we had good beginning. But after that, we know that it never went parallel to mainstream cinema. It's the case in the world over because we have new German cinema, new French cinema. In India also, we have this parallel cinema. Like the other one, I don't forgot her name. No. See, the NFDC was a strong force in 80s and there are a lot of good films. But now what is happening now? The market forces have already taken over. There is no such parallel moment. I think certainly with the emerging technology, there is going to be a different cinema in style and substance. The technology has already emerged. There was a transition period. Now we have the technology. Technology can be very effectively used for this kind of cinema. We need not call it as parallel, a sort of independent cinema. Now the cost ranges. Now the different cinema is not even the margins of the dominant cinema. It has to take a different path in its production, in its distribution, in its exhibition. We can't depend on the distribution system or we can't depend on the exhibition system of the dominant cinema to exist. So, but again, there has to be a different cinema, we know that. We have very clear examples like now the range of the cost, the range from 7 lakhs to 7 crores. We have the clear case of Sudevan making a film and winning a state award, Best Film Award, competing with the productions of 7 crores. This year, as a part of the new Malayalam cinema, we have such films made with very cost-effective film. We can't have any comparison with them. So it's not parallel actually. There are because even the aesthetics are changing now. Maybe the basics are maybe same, but the aesthetics of the cinema is changing now with the new technology. So I think it has to be called an independent cinema, different cinema. It need not be a parallel cinema.
Hello. I don't intend any disrespect to the people here because I know most of you and I know the extraordinary sacrifices you've put into your lives to get to where you are in your contribution to cinema. My question is towards an open forum like this, which discusses the future of parallel cinema. I think the idea of parallel cinema was exciting at one point of time because all of you were very young. And there was a bunch of youngsters with young blood wanting to do something different. And somewhere this seems like a dearth of that period, and that there are no longer young filmmakers who believe in something like this. And if there are, why are they not part of this forum? Because this forum would make much more sense if it was an inclusive forum and not an exclusive forum where people who remember and represent another period talk about the future, when you should also be incorporating a lot more of the present. So it's just a suggestion that this could become a much better discussion if I could see two filmmakers who you also cite constantly as people who are doing intelligent cinema to be part of this, because they could then be seen next to you, which would see that the future is actually alive, and we're not only talking about a lament to something that was. Thanks.
I don't know, I am adding to what this young boy was talking about. All the while I was listening all these dignitaries on the dais talking about the parallel cinema. And in the private sessions when we are talking about parallel cinema, I'm really provoked by this young chap's intervention. I'm very confused in the sense, there's a kind of veiled lamentation. In that point, I'm agreeing absolutely with that young boy. There's a kind of lamentation. Parallel cinema is over. Parallel cinema was something happened in the 70s or 80s, first half of the 80s or something like that. Now it is not there. I think there is a lot of confusion in a kind of approaching a cinema in the sense of major points of discussion is centered on the source of the funds, where the funds are coming for making a particular film. I think the focus should be on the film, the text, the cinematic text, whether the cinematic text is offering something alternative, something with a very rebellious kind of a content to the dominant and prevailing aesthetics and the mode of production or whatever it is. I don't mind getting funded from government agency. Even I'm not bothered about funding agencies from abroad or private agencies or whatever. But the ultimate point we have to concentrate on is on the cinematic text. Because if you are a kind of celebrating a cinema, a text, I'm not having any particular kind of a stress on particular cinema. If you're just focusing on whether this, I have read a very funny article on Adru Cinema Niralkot on that period from a left-wing writer, lambasting that film because that is funded by some foreign agency, something like that. In the same way, another extreme, if one particular film is made by 5 lakhs or 10 lakhs, is a great film. I don't agree with that kind of an approach. I don't think the content of cinema, the discussion on cinema, whether the cinema is parallel, alternative, or creatively enhancing the human spirit or whatever it is, it should be focused on the cinema as such, not the outside agencies funding or whatever it is, or the extraneous agencies. It should be cinema-centric, and it should not be veiled kind of lamentations on the 70s or whatever it is. Thank you.
Just make a little comment on what Govi sir said, because I always said that it exists. My talk was no lamentation for what happened early. It is there, I said that only when I talked, and then I said there are films which is coming up now, and it will happen again. And obviously, one thing Mohanethan pointed out, the mode of how to show this to people, that is becoming a major issue in all these things. So we need to have a certain kind of alternative systems, effective. We had effective film societies. It is not that much networked now. So we need to reinvent those kind of distributions, and kind of more kind of courageous films has to be made. That is probably lacking.
Not only that, when Gobinathan was speaking, he was telling me about, nobody was lamenting here. Nobody was lamenting it. I was telling you, even from the outset, I think I'm the first person who spoke here. I said there is nothing called parallel cinema. It's about attitudes in life, not on cinema. There is something called there is something called a parallel life that is possible. Because this mainstream life is so full of honor killings, so full of creeds, castes, when you can think outside. And there the question of cinema comes,
The point is that life in society, the whole situation is not like split divisions are not there.
No, I am not talking about divisions at all. I am talking about the attitudes that prevail, the attitudes that make you. As a filmmaker, if Gobinathan is a filmmaker, Gobinathan's attitudes are important. I am not talking about whether Gobinathan comes from mainstream or parallel. I am talking about Gobinathan's attitude. So I say that is more important than being in the.
No, what I am saying is that I exactly differ on that point. What I am saying is that even my attitudes need not matter. My cinema should talk. You engage with my cinema. I may be fraud.
Your cinema should have an attitude. No. Without an attitude, if you make a film, you will be blown out.
What am I? Gobinathan is a text. Gobinathan is a text created by you.
I tell you, the cinema that I see of Gobinathan should give me some attitude. It's not Gobinathan's attitude, it's the cinema's attitude that matters.
You fetch me in my film.
No, not you. It's the cinema's attitude. Without an attitude, you are an absolute nobody. Your cinema should give me something that is in the form of an attitude. That's a form of looking at things, looking at reality, looking at fantasy, looking at dreams. It's not Gobinathan. I am saying after that entire film, maybe the film made by Gobinathan. I can have foot about that. I am looking at a film. I am telling you there is parallel cinema, mainstream cinema, or whatever shit it is. I would like to look at that cinema and find out where this filmmaker stands.
സാറ് പറഞ്ഞതിനോട് ഞാൻ വിയോജിക്കുകയാണ്. കാരണം വെച്ചാൽ ഫണ്ടിങ് ഇൻഫ്ലുവൻസസ് ദ കണ്ടന്റ്. ഇപ്പം നിഴൽക്കുത്തിൻ്റെ കാര്യമാണ് പറഞ്ഞത്. നിഴൽക്കുത്തിൽ ചർച്ച ചെയ്യുന്ന വിഷയം നമ്മുടെ സൊസൈറ്റിയുടെ എവറിഡേ ലൈഫിനോട് എത്രത്തോളം റിലവൻ്റ് ആണ്. അത് US പോലുള്ള അല്ലെങ്കിൽ അതുപോലെയുള്ള ഒരു ഡെവലപ്ഡ് സൊസൈറ്റിയിൽ കൂടുതൽ ചർച്ച ചെയ്യപ്പെടുന്ന ഒരു വിഷയമാണ്. ഫണ്ടിങ് തീർച്ചയായിട്ടും സ്വാധീനിക്കുന്നുണ്ട്. അപ്പോൾ ഫണ്ട് എങ്ങനെ സിനിമ ഉണ്ടാക്കപ്പെടുന്നു, അപ്പോൾ ക്രിയേറ്റീവ് പ്രോസസ്. സുധേവൻ്റെ സിനിമയുടെ പ്രത്യേകത എന്ന് വെച്ച് കഴിഞ്ഞാൽ ഇറ്റ് വാസ് മെയ്ഡ് പൊളിറ്റിക്കലി, പണ്ട് കൊതാർത്ത് പറഞ്ഞ പോലെ. രണ്ടാമത്തെ വിഷയം, സാറ് പറഞ്ഞ എൻ്റെ ആറ്റിറ്റ്യൂഡ്, എൻ്റെ സിനിമയിൽ എൻ്റെ ആറ്റിറ്റ്യൂഡിനെ നോക്കേണ്ട കാര്യമില്ലെന്ന്. പക്ഷേ പ്രേക്ഷകനത് മനസ്സിലാവും, ആരാണ് ഈ സിനിമ ഉണ്ടാക്കിയതെന്ന് പ്രേക്ഷകന് കൃത്യമായിട്ട് മനസ്സിലാവും. അതാണ് രണ്ടാമത്തെ കാര്യം. പിന്നെ എനിക്കൊരു സംശയമുള്ളത്, നമ്മൾ ന്യൂ വേവിനെ കുറിച്ചൊക്കെ പാസ്റ്റിൽ സംസാരിക്കുന്നു. പക്ഷേ ഇപ്പം ഗോദാർദിൻ്റെ സിനിമ നമ്മൾ ഏത് വേവിലാണ് പെടുത്തുക? ഇപ്പോൾ നമ്മൾ 3Dയിൽ കണ്ട ഗോദാർദിൻ്റെ സിനിമ നമ്മൾ ഏത് വേവിലാണ് പെടുത്തുക? അപ്പോൾ അത് ഇങ്ങനെ ചില വളരെ സങ്കീർണമായിട്ടുള്ള പ്രശ്നങ്ങൾ ഇതിനകത്തുണ്ട്.
നിങ്ങൾ രണ്ടുപേരും പറഞ്ഞതിൽ ഒരു വിയോജിപ്പുണ്ട്. ഗോപിനാഥൻ പറഞ്ഞാലും ഇദ്ദേഹം പറഞ്ഞാലും ഈ സണ്ണി ജോസഫ് അടൂർ ഗോപാലകൃഷ്ണന്റെ നിഴൽ കുത്ത് എന്ന് പറഞ്ഞ സിനിമയുടെ ക്യാമറാമാനാണ്. നിങ്ങളൊക്കെ നിഴൽക്കൂത്ത് എന്നാണ് പറയുന്നത്. അത് ആദ്യം തെറ്റി. എല്ലാവരും നിഴൽക്കൂത്താണ്. Because Gopalakrishnan was very sad that everywhere his film is mentioned as Nilal-Koothu. I remember a particular day. Please, let me share a funny day where the FFSI, VK Joseph is here. VK Joseph was there in Trichur. There, Sukumar Azhikode was to give this award to Adur Gopalakrishnan. And before that award, if Gopalakrishnan is around, he said, my film's title is Nilal Kuthu. Everybody says Nilal Kuthu. And Sukumar Azhikode, after hearing him, goes to the stage and says, Nilal Kuthu. So he just looked at me from the stage because I was in the audience. So every time this happened, because Sunny Joseph is, along with Mangadani Verma, he showed that film. So you should at least say what is the title of the film.
I think we are running out of time. We have another session here at 3. So thank you everyone, all the participants. And also